수도 많은 수도 좀 하면 마찬가지 지금이라 심지어는 안에 대화다 딱 맞지. 내가다 동해도 좋아하네. 사회다라고 하면 지금 사회다는 네트워크에 아무도 탐해까지까지 가고 있어. 이 정생 사담이 봐도 릴레 자주 있는 것도 좀 지도가. 근데 나도야 이제 쇼츠 뭐지 제로. 지비질 강의 제도도 가도 강의 태워다 퀄리티. 근데 이런 건 제오제 투에도 좀 비슷해. 다른 조직이 쇼는 뭐 단단 그것도 테스트 버스는 싫어도 하고. 어떻게 자가 버스는 도 하고다. 가시 이제 영어들이 아니 결라도 키 아니 대사마라 버스 치나 되디가 먼저야 랑 컨트롤 되죠. 엔지메들이 부크디들도 그 아니 라게 클라파치기 심저지 가지 찍디 부크디네 칼카도 나가자는 것도 되죠. 아직 기술로 가와도 이제 경고에나래 내바에나래 지금 맞춰 잘라도 저자도 지금 제 마시는 좀 잘한가 되는 거 봐셔도 대대로 먼저 지어라 다 상에 그래도 동해 타다라는 랜드에 제 도움에는 감사해요.
So then, continuing with the seventh verse, in brief, directly or indirectly, I'll offer help and happiness to all my mothers and secretly take upon myself all their hurt and suffering. So herein, when we talk about secretly taking upon ourselves all their hurt and suffering, maybe as beginners, it's a little bit tough for us to actually engage in this practice. For bodhisattvas who have reached what we call the first ground on the path, then this practice is actualized. But then if we try to relate this to our own daily experience, then first we need to think about how we need to have a recognition of all sentient beings as our mothers from time immemorial, because of countless rebirths. We have countless rebirths in our previous lives. All of them has served as our mothers at one point. So first, with that recognition, then we develop a sense of gratitude and sense of concern for all sentient beings. With that attitude, then we begin to try to help and benefit them and not to cause them any suffering. So maybe this secretly taking upon ourselves all their hurt and all their suffering is not actualized in a beginner's path or beginner's practice. But what we can do, just to give an example of the kind of approach we can take to this practice, is what we can actually do in our daily lives. For example, when we commute to work from home in public transport, then in a bus, in a train, and then if we see someone who is old, elder people without a seat, or some like women with children and with like luggage, and then we should try to offer them our seats. Like we did this kind of small like act, then we begin to forsake our own comfort and try to alleviate their suffering and sense of discomfort. So from like this kind of small practice, we can build up to the actual practice of secretly taking upon ourselves all their hurts and suffering. And then also, not just this small example, there are many small ways in which we can help other people in distress or in discomfort. For example, there are many people who do not speak the language where we live, and then try to help these people navigate their way to where they want to go, or to like try to help them in situations where they cannot communicate effectively. And like this, so all these are examples. And like if you see some elder people just carrying like a lot of luggages and they have a hard time with it, then to try to offer your help in those situations. And this is in essence what it means to take upon other people's hurt and suffering, that you try to forsake your own comfort and to help alleviate their discomfort and so forth.
so ngona je de ke chimra ta mo ngan lo kar sam kali diga jel kali ga doy ta chuni ro ra de to sam gi lo gi mus che ma de na lo gi sam ta de ji shi ba gi che ba la ji se ran chi tu ne ra.
So then this is the gross kind of example that we can give to build up to the practice of actually taking upon other people's suffering and hurt. And as beginners, as I said before, the actual practice of secretly taking upon ourselves these hurts and suffering of others is not possible unless and until you reach, you become a bodhisattva yourself. But then this is not to discourage you or demotivate you from ever having the aspiration of what to achieve what the bodhisattvas themselves are able to do in these instances, such as the example we gave, wherein a bodhisattva sacrificed his limbs for the sake of a tigress and her cubs. So it's important to do what we can in the small opportunities that presents themselves to us, and not to always have an aspiration only to do what the bodhisattvas did, but to do what we can to alleviate other people's discomfort, suffering, and hurt. And this is important. And then while you do that, and then it's important to have an aspiration too, that may I, by training myself in these small acts of kindness, be able to have this all-encompassing, altruistic motivation for all sentient beings, just as the bodhisattvas themselves have. So this is what we mean by mind training, that we try to do it step by step. You continually familiarize your mind with this altruistic intention, with small acts of kindness, and then you always have the aspiration to achieve bodhisattva for the sake of bodhicitta for the sake of all sentient beings. So then, in the commentary, in various commentaries, then it cites this verse from the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. The Master Shantideva explains in this manner that whenever you see someone who is really suffering, then immediately to develop a sense of concern for this person. And then if you have a sense of concern, then you build compassion for that person in the sense that you want to alleviate their suffering. And this is the basis on which you build this practice of secretly taking upon yourself their hurt and suffering. And then when we talk about the actual visualization of secretly taking upon oneself other people's hurt and suffering, then these visualizations are meant for highly realized beings, wherein they really visualize this practice. And I think it is explained that with that powerful visualization of the highly realized beings, they are able to actually affect the situation itself. But for us as beginners, maybe we need something concrete to work with. So we try to build towards such visualizations, not immediately. We try to first have an experience of doing small acts of kindness, and then to understand for ourselves what it means to forsake our own discomfort for someone else. And then we can build towards developing such visualizations of secretly taking upon ourselves other people's suffering and hurt. So then when we're talking about developing a sense of concern for people who are suffering or people who we see suffering, then that sense of concern should be untainted by a sense of selfish, by sense of like selfish expectations from the situation, wherein you feel like, oh, if I help someone and all these people are looking at me, then they will look at me in a good light, that I'll appear to be a like good or kind person. So never ever have like such kind of selfish expectations from the situation. The concern should be genuine.
다단다 실로 네 조즈로디 타비차리 차는 거 잡지리라 아니 지가 제바디다 실을 붙여드리.
So with this, we kind of covered what is called the method aspect of the path up until the 7th verse, and now the 8th verse deals with the wisdom aspect of the path. So then we will leave the text here right now, and then I want to ask if you have any questions up until this point.
So sometimes I struggle, so I'll do my personal example. So my mother keeps insisting that to make her happy, I need to do specific things related to her religion. And I find that very challenging because it doesn't feel right to me, but she's quite adamant. So I guess, you know, would overlooking our own perceived morals or ethics to make someone happy still be the right thing to do, or should we like say no or find something else?
그런데 간이지 있으라 그런 게 아마지라 네니 그런 게 주루이라 아마 그런 게 주루 때가 다 됐으라 네 아마 그런 인다 이쯤에 아마 그런 인데 지부에 와 있어도스라 그런 아마 이게 그런 우주적이도스 아마 그런 게 주루기지 조당으로 조져라 어디 같이 지역으로 해라베로 그지시기도스 근데 니티 소소 지역하고로 다 무수도 무수기도스 가이스나 수수수기양 수중기 다수로 지겨라 어디 일로 당내 미신다기 주로디네 수중 다수로 다 치단치로 지라 딜바 쇼고요 버로 소르기도스라 갑트 디즈마다 메라 버베스라 수수랑기지 니 수중 다수로 지라 딜로 동네 미신다다 지부수에 다시 지어오래 영나 메라 버레스
한다 아메기 있으면 거는 지루는 지고랬어. 그만한 신발 지도. 다디라 다수도 아마 다른 분들이 아마나 통한 줘야겠다. 특 개보를 진짜. 지난기 때 수수비 취되래. 이제 상당히 거리 개면치에 돌아. 수술을 태워지네. 야보다 김지가 수준 남바치로 뭐 같이 치는 수술 취다 민간에 줄르다 보면 수술을 태워다면 야지냐 미치네 이제 뭐 같은 거. 아니네 아마나 그 기체디 지나게 내가 다른 거 내가 훨씬 아마 미리 상담으로 나라 디치 지구에 그거 이제 내 통고도 그런다. 그래 가는 뒤로.
So then this is so then first we need to realize that we shouldn't in our refusal we shouldn't inflict a sense of harm or disappointment in our parents, in our mother, but then we need to adopt a sense of like skillful method or skillful means of dealing with the situation. So you need to when we talk about like religion, then we shouldn't say that. First, we need to realize that we shouldn't say that our one's way of looking at things or one's view of a particular religion is the only way to deal with the situation. And then you need to adopt a skillful means of addressing the situation to your mother, wherein you try to explain that not everybody needs to follow the same type of religion, and that you need to explain, like from your own experience, that what appeals to you and what applies to you matters. And then if you're able to kind of explain that gently, explain that skillfully, immediately, maybe it's hard to see a result from your mother, but then you need to have like patience and forbearance in this situation, wherein you always try to explain the same point to your mother. And with that, I think over due course of time, there will be a point wherein like the situation improves.
근데 나 주는 거래 이거다. 이 방어도 나가래. 내가 치료 맞아야 돼. 강의도 이거 봐. 내 프랑스 베베기 루즈로다 보시나 가래는 보지 가만히도 되고 같이 제가 되게 루즈지다. 라시질면 뭐 주르지다는 소소도다. 제가 얘기 가만히 된가 가만히도 되게 되고요라. 근데 주 아자다 엄마도 아니도 다 땅도 결혼을 되려도 아니 같이 버렸어라. 근데 지체랑 아니 쟤도 베이스 아니 나한테 부지에 매 가마도면 저는 밤으로 같이 올라서 이게 더 아니 저는 이게 그런 노력하다 지에다 가만히라다 갈로 너무 많이 저 심하게 상담 펜토에 음식 대들이 건 취지도 제가 세신이면 대 너도 기다렸다 와지 기리는 쇼 너네도 중요한 말 아버지 책을 해야 근데 아니 담보 거기서 쓰가 버려 제가 뭐 잘하는 거 치 그렇게 이게 단다 무슨 배가다 갈리 군대가 주주다
So then, speaking from my own personal experience, even though in the Tibetan culture, like the parents do not really, we do not face the problem of our parents opposing the fact that we want to practice the Dharma and so forth. But it's the general custom in Tibet that if the parents have like a number of children, that they keep one child with them to kind of live with them, to help them and so forth. So then my parents decided that they were going to send all the elders to monasteries and so forth, and that they were going to keep me with them. But then since a child, I had this wish that I want to become a nun and that I wanted to practice the Dharma. So even though at that age I couldn't really articulate myself well, but I explained it to them. That if like you really need someone to look after and to stay with you, then I'm willing to do it. But then from the depths of my heart, I feel that I have this wish to become a nun and to practice the Dharma. And not only that, that if I become a nun, then I will become a genuine practitioner. I make the promise that I'll become a genuine practitioner, and that with this you will also accrue the virtue of sending me to a monastery, wherein like in your next life you might have some benefits from this act. So by explaining this genuinely from my heart, then my parents kind of loosened their opposition to the fact that I wanted to join a monastery. And then after coming to India, as I joined the nunnery and so forth, now the situation has changed, so they do not have any opposition at all.
그래서 나 친구가 밤에 거는 나데 라디 가르치려고 나 친구가 짱보러 열어 제지 건도 따이 집에 비냐로 이나 지나를 또 배가 좀 무서도 뺏으러 그냥 나 되어이나 아니 배에 참 대화야 거치는 데서래 지금 남의 정말 참고 절대야 중간에 정말 거쳐 그러나 비리도 와 근데 얘 나랑 이제 다 그래요 하고 이 아자에는 신당 그런 신 기고를 출연 거를 자고 좀 짜는 거 지체 난 되게 미거든요 생각 상에는 나 되게 아무짝도 되는 지금 내가 뒤지도 좀 있어 코드 따라 얘기 진짜 먼저 맞히라 하고 다 솔직히 짱보러 내 가상보러 내가 전부로 오시리 나는 엔데지로 있는 마음 분제 참서 거야 이 달라지도 상황
So the reason that my parents wanted me, particularly me, to stay with them was because as a child, they felt that I was intelligent and very frank with everyone. And in Tibet, it's considered very important to kind of gather and to build a strong link between the relations themselves. So if a child is like that when they are young, then they felt that as this child grows up, then he will be they will be really be able to pull all the like clans people and the relations together to form like one big family. And this is the reason that my parents had for like choosing me particularly to stay with them. But then I knew my abilities, and I look at my sisters. I look at my sister, and I know that my sisters could like in Tibet, like life is kind of hard. Wherein like in the nomad lands, you have to go pick up wood for fuel, then you have to go and pick up water from the streams. And my sisters could really do these jobs really well. But me, I knew that I couldn't do that. So that's why I decided. So I knew myself and I knew my capacities. So that's why I decided that I'm not suited to kind of stay with them. But my parents did not have any idea about like where my real capacities lie.
되는 게 아우시라. 내가 발라를 그냥 몸을 지키. 대신에 몸 실로 내래. 아우지 글래스잖아. 나 되는 아주 스 나서 키우들래 레그더라. 걔한테 대로 지내야 거다라. 이제도 이 딱콘도 나디스 가상보다 나 콘도 빈게 들리는 거 빼고 오치라. 근데내로 가만히 통하는 데 인사라. 시범만 가는 전화에 말해.
So then I had an uncle who used to visit us, and he always used to say that if you're in the house, then the kind of general feeling in the house changes. We feel very welcomed, and the atmosphere changes. And they really took all the relatives kind of took a liking to the fact that I was very frank, and they felt like the atmosphere of the house was like a change when I was in the house. And my parents noticed that as my uncle kind of shared with them this. So my parents noticed that, and then they had this thought that, oh, if this child is with us, then like all the family members could gather together, and it becomes one big family in the end. But I knew my capacities, and I knew that if I stay here, I wouldn't really be able to help them like with the daily chores and so forth.
계속 이 내가 들어다니는 거야 뭐 보시면은 이제 저도 걸러오는 저기 내가 걸리 지는 군주도도 질렀던 아마도 당연히 빨라서 시도 못해서 가봐줘 쉬우부터 저기 말아 쉬나 된 다다래도 하는 시 걸리 주니야 나 얘기랑 간 담주디가 내 결코 콘도이 빼줘 주치다 저러다 너무 좋죠 상담하다 친구가 되는 배야 걸리는데 레도 실제로야 뭐 봐. 다들 아마디 됐을 지금에 맞아요네. kalika chana ta betkora amara ta ma kalika chana la ne tagi tagi chana ya tini jodo to sila.
So this is not to say I tell you this story not to say that I was like intelligent already when I was a child or something, but to kind of give you the perspective that situations that we find ourselves change over the course of time. The fact that my parents had some sort of opposition for the desire that I had to become a nun, the situation changed wherein like after I became a nun, took my ordinations and so forth, then these very people who, even though they did not have such strong opposition, they had like a sense of opposition to this. But these very same people who had opposition to this situation, they were the ones who really supported. And they were after I took my ordinations and began my studies, they were telling me that the path that you chose was not wrong, that the decision that you made was not wrong. You made the right decision. So then, immediately, if you feel like some sort of opposition, then do not lose heart and do not become too distressed. You know your capacities and you know what you want to do, and try to keep at it. And maybe the situation changes over the course of time. So even though as I this story as a way of answering the question that you had, then I want everyone in the group to kind of listen intently, listen carefully to this, because I'm sure it's just not you who have this problem. It might be the case that in a household, a husband or a wife insists that someone follow the other's religion, and then a community pressurizes someone who has like a different idea or a different idea of the path that they want to follow, or so on and so forth. So this situation might be prevalent in this group among many people. So then, not as I tell this story, I hope it helps to helps the whole group as a whole to kind of know that the situation changes, even though like people have an opposition towards the kind of path that you want to choose in your life. But you have to know what you want, and you have to know what works for you, and then in due course of time, the situation can change.
다른 친구 있던데 콜리지로 나 부부를 데리고도 이제 한마카시 싫어 하면 그거 상담을 가. 부부지가 그래서 შემ바지 장인데 왜 감기도 장인데 왜 빨리 좀 맞이 사도 치래도 다 나체리 შემ바지 치래. 다 내가 그런 치료도 하고 내가 하지. 부부기 장인데 왜 შემ바지 한마기 შემ바지 땅. 대가리도 하시랑 수지 왜 이래도. 근데 파이 수수 파마 차나래 수수 빈자래 있는데 이 슈침불라요 뭐라. 수수 삼수 시한테 보는 게 아니라 대통령도 되는데 아니 코로나에 파이 미진 코로나에 스틸 단데 딜레 야가리는 담으라. 봐. 걔네가 삼수도 시한테 있다. 지난주에 파마 차이 그래. 아니 구글에 쇼시 배다 거라데 다가 돌라라 통마라. 얘기 선발들이 저는 디치네 야가요 선발들이 코로나 몰아서는 지난 코로나에 삼다. 딜레 야가리는 로토네 야보다. 샤바 같이 가야 돼요.
So then, when we think about this situation, then not just about like the kind of religion or the kind of practice that we want to adopt, then I'm sure like many of you would become parents, and when you become parents, then I can think of the example that when your kids grow up, they might want to study something that they like. They might want to pursue something that they like. And if as parents, if we keep insisting that they have to choose this particular line of profession that you think is the best for them, then it's the same situation again. So we should not engage in such. And in these cases, there are many like stories wherein the child, because out of a sense of like desperation and suffocation, commits suicide because he or she is not able to pursue what he really wants to pursue. So we need to, as we want our choices to be respected, then we must learn to respect other people's choices too. And in this instance, the interaction should be meaningful in the sense that you explain to them what you think would be best for them too, but then also you need to trust their ability to make the choice for themselves. So then, I'm not sure if this is the case in the West, wherein like you uphold the values of like freedom of choice and so forth. But these kind of cases are prevalent, and I've seen it with my own eyes in the society that I live in, and in the society that I live in. So maybe it's not really prevalent in the West, but then the point is the same, that we need to respect other people's choice and the ability of other people to make choices for themselves. So then I know someone, I had an acquaintance who had a child, and then this child was really bright and really good in his studies, but then the father already had like an idea that the child should learn Thanga painting. And Thanga painting, drawing like traditional Tibetan Buddhist art form. So he had this idea that the child should learn this as a craft, and then he was hell bent on sending this child to learn Thanga painting. And then the kid and the child couldn't say no, and he actually joined the school where he was supposed to learn Thanga painting. But then, because this was not what he really wanted to do, then he didn't really study it well, and then out of a sense of frustration, he fell into addiction, active addiction. And then, as he grew up, he couldn't hold a household for himself. So this is the kind of negative consequences of not respecting other people's ability to make decisions for themselves and imposing our own choices on people. Questions? Yes.
I was wondering with the Tonglen practice, I assume it's important to be confident in that process of taking on the suffering of someone else, that is something which is manageable from your level of practice and the particular situation that you're in. And perhaps how might you manage with a situation where perhaps someone is asking, similar to questions that have been asked before, in a way kind of asking you to kind of take on their suffering and give your joy or your positive energy. And it might seem, from some angles, maybe there's no reason why you wouldn't do that. But yeah, if you have a feeling that actually I don't think I can do this right now, how can you navigate that? How can
Tonglen nyamlen ni kol chwachigda. Tonglen. Tongwa lemba la chura. O dila ke juchi de zamba ni suzu la tengsu doji korebes. Tanga ki tonglen nyamlen chitu gi rela ni tengsu korebes. Pena chashil na tanga zo michi gi yora. Nar de michi, dungi nyangshim bi michi gi yora. Ta churang la ju gawa sama nga la te da la ne dang yong mi sa baras. Ti ne dang yong de zamba chochi ni samna dang nasara. Di tema to e chi kamindas. Suzuki dewa gawa gari vinayra. Mishe de la tonglen gi nyamlen kutum. Ma tema to keminda kachan tema to e tiwa do legi das. Inaya da mo su pa de zamba khabu do re de ra. Ta di kap de zamba dengzu khaze yume ta de la ra legi das. Da di nganzu ki thap kheba chine khandes donglen chebas.
Tonglen la ngone zamba samata zamba na kana khabar samata na ma de bawa chi tu re chegida. 네, 이만치지 담았다. 샌드위치 담을 때마다 한다. 오늘 이 야매진 집에 야매진 다 집어서 좀 집어서 자야. 세상에서 집어다 뜻을 무대지 밀때 오늘 때마다. 라. 담보 거라 자야 담보로 이상으로 땅. 근데 라바디 딜때. 라. 야매진 담. 뭐 춘주로 안데 딜때 냐. 그 집어다기 위해서 파서 줄때. 갈래 봐. 신발을 떼줘야 돼. 라. 담보도 못 지나기 슈슈하게 뭐 시대라는 가르쳐. 나도 뭔가 스트레스를 받는다. 자인 이제 순대다 이런 데로 보면은 아까 집집마다 지다. 고무지들 나도 스텔라는 소소하게 유디가 빠비가. 매워 있는데 늦어요 이치가. 됐다. 근데 개만 샤스테는데 개만 그래서 투투즈들 아니 슈슈야 소불다 상담. 그냥 간에서.
So then when we talk about building confidence in the practice of Tonglen or giving and taking, then sometimes when we look at the actual practice of Tonglen, not just the visualization, then the actual practice of Tonglen, then we look at the examples of these highly realized and genuine practitioners, and then we feel like, oh, this is something that I can never do myself. This is the kind of reaction we have towards the actual practice of Tonglen, wherein you give everything you have and take like all the people, everyone's suffering But then, when we look at these masters and the way that they approach the practice of Tonglen, then these masters also started some place wherein they did not have the confidence. So the kind of examples that these masters used to give is this small example wherein in the practice of cultivating generosity, then they used to, while visualizing, they used to try to build up their motivation and cultivation in the sense that they keep, let's say, this pen in this hand and saying like, okay, it's in my possession now. And then they place it in the other hand and then say, okay, now I have given it to someone else. And like in that manner, trying to familiarize the mind with that motivation, with that act, repeatedly, and wherein like the actual situation presents itself, they do not have a sense of attachment like as before. So this is the kind of small example through which we can try to build up our confidence. So of course, as you say, having confidence or being confident really boils down to knowing our capacity at that particular moment or our own ability to perform such acts. So then always with this example, always try to do what you can. For example, if you cannot give away like $1,000 first, then try to start with like 1 cent or $1. And with that, you learn to let go of your sense of attachment. So really, it really matters how you think about the situation. Just as you mentioned that you might have the question that, oh, why not? Why not? We can do it actually. Now, from a theoretical perspective, it is possible, of course. As we say that if we have the afflictions within ourselves, then we also can, over the period of time, learn to get rid of these afflictions. And if we can get rid of these afflictions, then we can achieve Buddhahood or liberation. And then, of course, theoretically, all of this sounds possible. And there's the question that yes, we can do it. But then we have to remind ourselves that in practice, we should start from small things, not always reach for the highest possible aim immediately. Because the way that the afflictions work is like we need to try to confront them. And when we do confront them, learn to do it step by step. And only in this way we can try to really build up our practice, so to say. And then another way of looking at like the act of generosity or performing the act of giving, let's say, is to think about how all compounded things, all compounded phenomena are impermanent in their nature. And that even though like I have this in my possession, the moment that I die, nobody knows. It's not definite that I'll die on this day. I could die any moment. So while I have this thing in my possession, I'll make the best use of this for myself and for others. And if I can develop the intention to give it to others, then all the better.
아니 비결이나 보는데 지금 가서 제 마토도 저라.
So I'll give you an example how we like develop a sense of attachment and how we can try to overcome this sense of attachment to possessions. As an example, let's say that you are leaving from this place tomorrow forever, and then you have a lot of things, a lot of stuffs in your possession. And if you know that you are leaving tomorrow, then you are not so attached to these things. It becomes a burden for you to carry in your travels, so you give them away. You say that I'm going to give everything away because I know I'm going to leave this place tomorrow. So like that in life too, because when do we have a sense of attachment about our possession? We say like, this might come in use for me tomorrow or sometime in the future. This might come in use for my relatives or for my friends or something. And this might come in use when I'm sick or something. Always sometime in the future. Wherein like, if we think about it, it's not definite that we'll live up to see tomorrow too. This is the nature of samsara itself. So with that example, try to relate it to life itself, wherein we know that we have to depart from this life. So then we can try to let go of our sense of attachment in that manner. So when we say like let go of your attachment to your possessions, then don't give everything you have to everyone. Then you will become a beggar yourself. And then you might, as Milarepa was accused, you might accuse me of making you a beggar.
Just to continue on that with the visualization of attachment, is there any practice we can do with attachment to people or animals? Like to reduce the attachment?
Tatayi nganzo sangsingi maburigla nganzo yi tonglayi ni nyamle nangyo yore songwa lamba chini pa. Teda wa nganzo yi semje la chapa yungura, tina shi milay chapa yungura. O tazula ni nyamle teda wa nyamle dinte neke wa dinte yore wes. Okay, and so then when we talk about, let's take the example of people, the sense of attachment that we develop towards people, and then we need to try, think about the kind of drawback with the overt sense of attachment to people, so that because of this attachment towards one person, then we engage in fights in aggressive manner with other people just out of a sense of attachment to this person. And that there are cases wherein like just because of a sense of attachment towards one person, that you are fighting against a whole community or the whole world. In your mind you develop such an attitude that you are ready to do it, which doesn't make sense. This is the kind of drawback of the developing an overt sense of attachment towards people. So then, one way of looking at this is like when two people fall sick and one is your relative and the other is not your relative, then look at the kind of reaction we have to the situation. We immediately have a sense of concern. We try to look after the person who we know or who is related to us. Whereas like the suffering is the same in both instances. So the attachment kind of makes us care for only one person. So from herein we know like attachment kind of clouds our judgment in the process. So then from personal experience, we all have this sense of attachment to people in our hearts. For example, during the recent earthquake in Thailand, when the news broke that there was a massive earthquake in Thailand, immediately my thought went to one girl from Thailand that I knew. Even though in Taiwan there were a lot of people who were suffering, my only concern is towards one person. Yes. Other questions?
그럽니다. 이제 집에 가서
So I wonder if you can provide a little more clarity on the distinction between attachment and sense of relationship and community. So, you know, like a house, understanding that you move from house to house, and when you move house, it's okay, like, you know, you're not necessarily attached like to that house, and like some people in your life, you meet them, they come, they go, and that's okay, but you know, family and people you're very close to, it's almost like you have a responsibility to care for them because you know they don't care for you, like you're sort of supposed to kind of care for your family, and so like to try to have that loving kindness relationship, but still knowing that there are some people that we have extra relationship with, like, so yeah, what's the more clarity or more commentary on like trying to navigate the line between over attachment and loving community and loving family relationships?
먼저 더 차과더라. 차신 연구여라 미바르다. 아니 차신디다 아니 남주 말한서 미다 미바라 되어야 거라다. 아니 미 뭐좀 수수 남미나 빈자로이나 랑신이 들라 선고도 차 차신도 원래 차 가져는 되어버라 랑신 다가랑라. 남미기 되어 있는 zaman 콘솔도 랑신기 기엔도지라서 소속이 디 선고지여로 가이나는 주마치랑 같이 차는 콘솔 지치기래. 땡고인의 지치여를 기엔도지 아니 지금 미다 미기 되어라 뭐요 되어이 뭐 주니랑 신기 직 차신은 나의 선고도 연구여라서 다만 저기 미다 미바라가 아니 차신기 되어디 아무 말이 송겨라서 남게 미라 차내지로 와시에로다 지그라 근데 아무 말이 송겨라서 이나의 되어만 뭐지 뭐 그랑다랑 신기 차신 것도 왔어 다딜라만 저기 냠래 양다버지 지에는 탑 켜봐 주면 안 된대죠 그랬어
자신이 당 같이 자신이 내가 되어온다 그래서
이나이랑 신기구랑 작신 지리기도 대화기 뭐 어디 그런 게 다치한 가지고 빈자에는 신기 콜을 쭉 쉐어선 걸어 준 거라 어디
네 저런 카드 그거 저기 딱 가버리지라 네야 저는 저 미카시지도 미카시베 수수 빈자라 미세기 슈 차지 메죠 미신발에 지가 막아야 메죠 자라치테는 빈자에는 있으니 냠도 되든도 그 이게 뭐지 거기 이것이 아니죠 거기 조조도 되는 데서 그런 뭐라는 배치를 이거 조조도 배치해서 그잖아 빈자를 뭐 못하겠네 신발만 집어지는 되게 미카시도 안 돼요 그럼 사실 수수 빈자를 막 해야 가지고 돼요
so then it's very hard to let go of this kind of like attachment because the nature of the relationship itself is like this right because we are family we are so on and so forth we are related and so forth but then there are people who have like an economous relation or view of the relation between who we consider are related to us or who we consider not related to us. For example, I have a nun friend who has a brother and who is like that, and she complains that when the monk gives money, so when he gives money to the nuns, then she naturally has an expectation that she's going to receive more money from him because we are related. But the brother gives the same amount of money to everyone, and she complains that I expect more. I thought because he's my relative, he's going to give me more money, but then he gives the same money, the same amount of money to everyone. 띵 안서 젠줄레는 양용 디스 숙청불리기다. 안서 방어민치는 다른 분들아.
네.
수수수수 줘버려다. 민모 춘에 마시는 냠도랑 신기 좋은 거다.
네.
대화로지.
네.
So maybe speaking from my own experience, when we came to exile as a young person, then we like lose all our like connection to our family, and then you realize that you have to make relations with people that you've never seen or never known before, and this does not develop because of a sense of like attachment to people, because we find ourselves in the same situation, and then naturally we know that just as I don't want to go hungry, the other person don't want to grow hungry. So as kids, as you're growing up, you're hungry all the time. So then you learn to share, like, you know, things that you have with other kids. So then the bond that we develop sometimes is like even more stronger than the bonds that we have with like relations or relatives.
Yeah, I wanted to continue on that question and just in my own understanding of, I feel like there's a difference between responsibility and attachment. So to our family, yeah, there are these expectations that you should show up, and that doesn't necessarily need to imply that there's more love or more like attachment. But there's a responsibility because when we're close to someone, we also have the power to hurt someone much more than we can hurt someone who we're not close to. So in that sense, for me, like, makes sense with responsibility.
The Kurangi tagin labjadil tujabnera. Ini gain la edip kechi moris takapti dizamba. Dewa Kurangi tak mi pazu dewa gi ngodi Kurang bijaji chagi venas. Ini pada gain Kurangi mene gain gi chane kola vegan roji chane yabu chewar was kola. Kain na tagaram bijadi ki sula ni manga ino chesi girwas. Sulu manga ino chesi girwas. Mare. Tanda yabu chewa na shinrwa. Ani pinjadi ki sula ino chegi nipa imgo yorwas. Cheza ani nedang delasra. Pajo midigi pajo kalagir ngoma shinjo jita ngoma shinjo ji chenasra. Ngoma shinjo dela ani kalagir chik tama diga to chuna. Susula nusu samene ni shukchimu sowa jigimidwa. Ra. Tina shin susula chik di chena. Dewa yojo ina susula nusum sa showa nusum na da chigura. Sowa chabo yungurwas. Di dewa di Kurang imo de rang chagi veres. Ina da pinja de di chik zamani lengen ro di susu kurbuye kechim veres.
네. 그다음에 또 이제 스페셜하게 전쟁을 전해서 수천 전치고 있는 따까야메 단데 우리 야와 우리 기라식 있잖아요. 기라식 있잖아요. 우리 부재세요. 그 최고는 데다 정말 일이 잘하는 거야. 그래서 뭐 미국 쪽으로 보다 보면 니마 걸로 보고 싶지 않다. 너 보면 나는 이게 어디야 내가 야 미국 보다 이거야.
So of course the point you're making is valid and it is talked about in the text, and we can simply look at it in this manner that we are repaying a kindness that someone has showed us, right? So repaying a kindness, having a sense of gratitude for the relation itself is explained in the text. This is valid, and this is the way we should try to look at it simply and not like overcomplicate it.
어쨌든 쉬는보다 가서 스타이나 근데 코로나 중에 아마 있는 자 근데 아마 있는 이 정말 하고 있다. 근데 아마도 아마 다 샤샤. 여보잖아요. 따도 맞으셔. 이 뭐를 빼야 보지 않으시. 수도 너나랑 키도 그러나 아마도 요새 미지가 아마 주시는데 내가 이네 이 선호는 딱 하시는 그걸 진짜로 주거든요. 그 아마 제일 그 아마 다 리도지를 뭐 얘기 봐. 내가 또 수도 이게 그니 장소는 아마 이것도 정말 다되게 만들 거야 합니다. 선호는 딱 이자를 얘기 집어치고 이러고 잘 먹어.
So then from the worldly point of view, of course, and the kind of nature of the relationship dictates the kind of like responsibility that we have with people. But from a genuine practitioner's perspective, then we need need to let go of all these like contraptions that we have in our heads that they are related to me or they are not related to me. We need to learn to look at everyone equally as our mothers. So, to give you an example, for a genuine practitioner, helping your own mother and helping someone else in distress is effectively the same thing that they are helping someone who has been their mother. So they look at everyone as their mothers. So they are everyone is equal in their eyes. But from the worldly point of view, of course, we have like relationships that have been conceived on ideas. And relationships have the nature of the relationship dictates the kind of responsibility we say we have to shoulder in situations. Questions? Yes?
Tibetan people seem to be very happy. What's the secret?
Because we have no independence. That's why we are happy.
Just kidding, right?
Just kidding. So then we cannot really pinpoint the reason. Better? Okay. So then we cannot really pinpoint the reason why Tibetans appear to be happy people. One thing maybe is the sense of community that we have in the culture itself. Tibetans generally, when you look at them, they like to gather together and they like to have a good time together with their own people. And of course, and then like Tibetans do not like to stay on their own or become isolated from each other. They always try to do things together. They always try to eat together, gather together. And there's this sense of community in the culture itself. And then of course there are also like practitioners who go up into the mountains. There are hundreds of such practitioners. But the general population kind of have a sense of community that they want to do things together. For example, most of the Tibetans, when they have to go and run some errands, like you have to go somewhere to do something, even though they are able to go and do it themselves alone, they prefer to have a companion with them. Not because they cannot do it alone, but the journey is much more fun with someone with them. So this is the kind of attitude that Tibetans have towards like how to live life. They like to enjoy together and so forth. I think this is one reason. And perhaps another reason is because the tradition and the culture itself is infused with the Dharma. Then even if if the people do not have like deep understanding of the text and so forth, ideas like impermanence, so forth and so ideas like impermanence make sense for them. So they do not really have like too much attachment towards like saving for the future and so forth. So they like to have a good time right now. So maybe these are the reasons why Tibetans appear like happy people.
这个你그거 용도 들어도 말이야. 그거 빼지 말아. 사자. 나 지서 거기네. 나도 진짜 그래. 얘기 빨라라 굉장히 지지. 보면 보라. 아니 네 부부 제. 니 아마 쇼라 굉장히 아마라 굉장히 같은데. 근데 이 부부보다 진짜 뭐보여. 근데 다 작은 거라도 시즌 거는 제가 다 양도 순간에다. 제가 그리 하고 말다. 설명한 도 말시를 하고 말아. 때이네 부부들 너가 두 숨쉬 치휘네. 부부 참으로 루루지. 아니 코도 칼라 조식이 말데 파마도 칼라 조 코도 비사신 봐. 지코도 부디 줘야 되거든요. 소소히 나 수도 받아. 부부를 기분 외시더라. 근데도 디주 칼라도 그렇지. 아 기분 쉬워 그게 정말 이 공시도 이제 전부 전화다. 대신 대인 로트.
So then I cannot speak for the whole population, but from my own experience and the kind of environment that I was brought up when we were in Tibet, then like all the people like enjoyed like gathering together, and not just the adults. The adults make the space for children of the same age to gather together, and even though as children we do not know how to cook or like how to make a fire, then the adults make a space for the children to like try to cook for themselves, try to interact with each other. So you try to create a bond with the community by like gathering and from a small age. And then this, when you grow up, it extends not just to your relatives, you know. You come in like a foreign land and you see people, you want to gather with them, and then you try to have like meaningful interactions with these people.
아니 코라이게 부분 보고 싶은데 또 그시고 챙겨도 아니 기분이 좋아. 야가를 때도 좀 야면서 좀 저한테 내려야 봐. 근데 저랑 나라야 붙이기도 배도 야고 가야 뭐 되는 키우도 이는 앞에 로고도 쉬고 챙긴다. 그래서 그것도 진짜 거든요. 근데 이게 이제는 지야 있는 누이는 관심이 배 정보로 오셔야 돼. 그게 아니 과는 좀 지우대로 근데 아마 아주 최근 그 사람 정보로 이제 요즘 저기
So then when my mother came to visit me here in India, then my mother used to miss her people and the way that people like, you know, got together in Tibet. And she used to say like, India as a land is very beautiful and it has a lot of facilities that we don't have in Tibet. But I really do miss my own people and the gatherings that we have, because the elders used to get together and the elder people like go for what we call circumambulation, kora together, recite like prayers together, and then they engage in like killing each other and all that. So there is a sense of community for all age groups where they belong, where they take part in the same things. So even though like you feed me very well when I'm in India, you give me the best clothes to wear, so on, but I do miss my own circle back in Tibet. So I have to go back to Tibet, and she returned.
아니 결혼하니까 살살 그 로라. 다 간지만 수집을 넣어야 돼 개천으로더라. 밀었다는 넣었다는 수수 초대기 차는데 누구 전도되는 계속 해라야 뭐. 그래 지우체 안 수에 이제 어떤 분야도 주도하면은 수에 정말 전문 자원 정도 아니 지지를 이치. 근데 저는 미치지고 도와서 수수 집은 가래 가오체. 지우체 계산해.
So then being happy is to your advantage in your life. And being happy is to your advantage in your life. And with the sense of like being independent, if you do not engage with other people, and then you become very isolated, it doesn't make sense, then you lose all sense of happiness that you can have in this life. So I think being happy is to your own benefit, and then if there are ways in which you can make yourself happy, then you should try to open yourself more to like, if there are no like immediate relatives or someone you someone you're close to nearby, then to open yourself to your immediate surrounding first, and to develop faith and trust between yourself and and those people, and then the relation progresses wherein like you have like a sense of bonding with your immediate surrounding, and this is to your advantage, and you will begin to be more happy, and then you do not become isolated with this insistent idea that I have to be independent all the time.
And so would widening or increasing these like community bonds and like these larger, because I think in the West, I don't know about everyone, but I think we lack a lot of that sense of community. So would putting effort into that and really trying to build more of these community relationships help lessen our attachment, or maybe like as an antidote almost to hyper attachment to our like immediate family? Like I know we rely a lot on like spouses and that sort of thing to like provide that social support and network.
Of course.
But then increasing the network and actually having more people then like almost like dilutes attachment.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes. This is evident from lived experience. 맞아. 미둘로 마보 치나라. 당신이 콘솔라 남이다 니야기지 도시질레 못다. 남이나 시게. 대인은 소소 남이들을 자신으로 슈치고 해주디 미신달라 다랑기 생구로나 자신 용어로 그래. 사마로 집어도 빠님 따와로 실리다. 네 가리거를 된절로 좀 모르겠어.
일단 들어오라. 일단 저기 레더지 고테도다 되게 차르고라. 미라 이상으로 누가 참 집었다 들어. 자신이 아니 내가 나는 거기도 얘기 안 하냐다 상마다 지려고 그 말에 해지 말. 잘 참았다고 해도 알겠습니다.
So then this is evident from the fact that when someone finds themselves in position of power, then the first thing that they have to learn is to look at everyone who falls under their jurisdiction as equal. Not to say like my family is more important because I'm a leader. To always look at everyone equally.
네,
Shall we?
시간 줘봐.
So we break for lunch then.